So first question, we have sine 240 degrees. It will always ask you to calculate the value of the expression without the use of a calculator. Okay. So calculate. Calculator. All right. So with reduction, right, you want to get this value so that it is less than 90 degrees. So that's why we call it reducing an angle or reduction. So first things first, when you look at that, in which quadrant is 240 in? So that's first quadrant, second quadrant, third quadrant, and fourth quadrant. Which quadrant do you guys think 240 is in?
The third quadrant.
Right, so it's the third quadrant. That means if it's in the third quadrant, it's going to be sine 180 degrees plus some value. We need to figure out what that particular value is. 180 plus something will give us 240. What is that thing that I must put in the block there?
60.
Perfect, right? So that's going to be 60 at that point. Now that we know it's in the third quadrant and it's 180 plus theta, our theta this time is 60 degrees, we can then reduce that further to sine 60 degrees, but there's a sign missing here. What's my sign? Now, if it's in the third quadrant, only tan can be positive, right? That means if we only require tan to be positive, this becomes minus sine 60 degrees, right? So 60 degrees is an example of a special angle, right? Yeah. Now, the trick with these questions, okay, is knowing what the sine 60 degrees is in special angles. So since you have a negative sign there, this is also going to be negative. And sine 60 degrees as a special angle is root 3 over 2. So that's how we go from sine 240 to the special angle. Any questions so far? Any questions? Any concerns? Okay, cool. So I'm assuming you guys understood that one. Does this make sense? Gemma, Kenny, Zoe, what do you guys think?
Hi, ma'am. Sorry, I kept getting disconnected. Would you mind going up another one, please?
Okay, sure. So that was reduction with special angles. So I'm going to choose another one, right? So let's begin with tan 135 degrees, okay? Again, with this type of question, they will ask you to calculate without the use of a calculator, right? So you're going to express it so that it is a final special angle, okay? So tan 135, let's think about which quadrant is 135 in. Okay, so remember again, this is our Cartesian plane. That's the first quadrant, second quadrant, third, and fourth. Which one do you think it's in? So tan 135 is going to be in the third quadrant, right? Why is it in the third quadrant? Because this value here is actually 180 minus something, okay? So this is going to be 180 minus some value, okay? What should I subtract from 180 so that I get 135? Any ideas? You can work it out on your calculators. 180 minus what will give me 135?
45?
Yeah, 45, okay? So I put 45 there. Now, okay, so since you have your 180 minus 45, okay, and we said we're in the second quadrant. When we reduce this, only sign can be positive. That's why when I reduce that, this becomes minus tan 45 degrees, okay? So 45 degrees, that's an example of a special angle, okay? So tan 45, okay, is equal to 1. But since you have a negative sign there, this just becomes negative 1, okay? Where do you get your marks for these types of questions? Okay, so you're going to get the first mark for saying minus tan 45 and then minus 1. Yes, Yassine, I see your hand is up, love. Do you want to type your question? Okay, type your question. Okay. So that is how we would go through the special angle. Okay. Now let's do another one. Something that's going to, okay, so cos this time. Cos 330 degrees. Okay. Okay. It's fine, Yassine, you can leave and then rejoin. All right. Okay. Right. So cos 300. Yes, Cleo, go for it, love.
Ma'am, I wanted to ask if we could do after this one a specific sum
A specific?
a specific sum that I'm struggling with, ma'am.
Yeah, of course, definitely. All right. So
Okay,
cos, sure, love. Okay. So cos 330, right? Which quadrant is 330 in, right? 330, okay, is in the fourth quadrant. Okay, so maybe you're wondering, how do I know? So remember, when you're on your Cartesian plane, you move anti-clockwise like that, right? You start off at 0, and then here, this is 90. At this point, that's 180. At this point is 270. And finally, when you've made a full rotation, that is now 360 degrees. So 330, like I said, is in the fourth quadrant. If it's in the fourth quadrant, only causes positive, right? In the fourth quadrant, what we have there is 360 degrees minus something will give us 330. This one is much simpler to see. So 360 minus 30 will give me 330. So that's why I'm going to put the 330 degrees there. Okay. So at this point, I can perform my reduction now. This, since it's in the fourth quadrant and it's cos, my cos when I reduce it is going to remain positive, and this is cos 30 degrees. As a special angle, cos 30 degrees is equal to the square root of 3/2. Okay, so yes, they've said without the use of a calculator, right? So what we don't want is for you to jump from 330 to this final answer. You can't do that. You have to show steps in between. So show the correct reduction, then that answer. Okay. So you don't have to memorize all the special angles. You can literally now, when you've shown all the working and you're just left with the final thing, you can punch in the cos 30 degrees to get root 3/2. Okay. Right. Cleo, yes. Your question?
So the sum that I have is sine 410
Sine 410, yeah.
over cos 40.
Okay. Cos 40. What do they ask you to do? What's the preceding question with this one?
And basically what we've been doing for everything else, ma'am, that's the question for this
Okay.
also.
Do they also say calculate without a calculator or calculate without the use of a calculator?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it? Okay. Let's see. All right. The use of a calculator. Right. Now, 410, right? Now, this one is actually, what this means is they have completed a full revolution, which is 360, and they've come back up to 410. So whenever you have a value bigger than 360, the first step with these ones, first step, subtract, okay? Subtract 360. That's your first step with that one. Okay, so let's start with the numerator. So sine 410, first things first, subtract that, 360 there. And what do we get when we subtract 410 60? We get sine 50 degrees. Okay, now at the bottom here, we have cos 40 degrees. So we're going to get a mark for doing that, subtracting so that you get sine 50. Okay, then what we call these two, these are actually complementary angles. Do you guys know what complementary angles are? Complementary angles, when you add them together, they give you 90. So that's why we call them complementary. Okay. And with complementary angles, sine 90 degrees minus theta is going to be equal to cos theta. Okay, in the same way, cos 90 degrees minus theta is going to be equal to sine theta. Okay, so that means looking at these two, these are two complementary angles, and I can perform a reduction of either, right? If I look at the top, what can I change the top part to? I can change it to any idea.
Cos 40.
Perfect, right? I can change that to cos 40. Now, at the bottom, can you see now you've got cos 40 divided by cos 40, and that gives you 1. Now, we could have also, another way of doing it, right? Instead of changing the sine 50 to cos 40, I could have changed the cos 40, right? Keep the sine 50 at the top, then you change the denominator to sine 50. And look, you get the same answer as well. Okay, good question.